Ian W. Toll's Twilight of the Gods, War in the Western Pacific, 1944-1945, is the thunderous, intimate, and unflinching conclusion to his Pacific War Trilogy, a work that reads like an epic told from the decks of carriers, in the wardrooms of admirals, and in the mud and blood of islands that became the last terrible stages of the Second World War. For American readers, Toll's book is more than military history. It is a national mirror that reflects courage and hubris, technological mastery and human cost, and the strategic choices that shaped the United States' emergence as a global naval power. He brings the reader into the cockpit, onto the bridge, and into the minds of leaders, Nimitz, Halsey, Spruance, King, so that the vast machinery of war becomes a series of human decisions with consequences that ripple across oceans and generations. Toll opens with the sense of momentum that carried the U.S. Navy from the Marianas to the Philippines, and then toward the Japanese home islands. The narrative is cinematic. Carrier task forces steaming under black skies, pilots briefing in the pre-dawn hush, destroyers racing to screen the flat tops, and amphibious convoys threading minefields and shore batteries. But Toll's gift is to slow the camera, to linger on the small moments that reveal character, the terse cable from Washington, the admiral's sleepless night, the pilot who writes a letter he never sends. He insists that the story of 1944-1945 is not only about ships and planes, but about the men who commanded them and the sailors and airmen who paid the price. A central thread of the book is the clash of personalities and doctrines. Toll examines how the Navy's leaders, Admiral Chester Nimitz's steady strategic vision, William Halsey's aggressive temperament, Raymond Spruance's cool calculation, and Ernest King's political ferocity, shaped operations. He shows how personalities mattered. Halsey's boldness could seize opportunity, but also create risk. Spruance's caution preserved forces, but sometimes frustrated those who wanted to press advantage. These human tensions are not mere color. They explain why fleets moved as they did, why battles were fought in certain ways, and why controversies, most famously Halsey's decisions during Leyte Gulf, still echo in debates about command and responsibility. Toll's portraits are unsparing and humane, giving American readers a sense of the burdens of leadership in wartime. The book's battle narratives are rendered with cinematic clarity and forensic detail. Toll takes readers through the great naval engagements: the Philippine Sea, where American carrier aviation shattered Japanese naval air power; the Marianas Campaign, which brought the B-29 within range of Japan; Leyte Gulf, a sprawling, chaotic clash that combined surface action, carrier strikes, and the first desperate use of kamikaze tactics; and the grinding island fights at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where the cost in American lives and material was staggering. Toll does not romanticize combat. He describes the roar of anti-aircraft, the sickening sight of burning carriers, the small acts of heroism, men manning guns until they were killed, pilots ditching into the sea and clinging to rafts for days, and the bureaucratic and tactical errors that turned good plans into bloody ordeals. For U.S. readers, these scenes are both familiar and newly vivid, because Toll's prose places them in human scale. Another dominant theme is the technological and industrial edge the United States brought to the Pacific. Toll shows how American shipbuilding, radar, code-breaking, and aircraft production created a margin of superiority that Japan could not match. He explains how carrier doctrine matured, how radar-directed fighter control changed air defense, and how logistics, fuel, ammunition, replacement pilots became the invisible backbone of victory. Yet Toll also cautions against technological determinism. Machines mattered, but so did training, doctrine, and the willingness to accept casualties to achieve strategic ends. For American readers, the lesson is clear and complex. Industrial might enabled victory, but it required leadership that could wield that power wisely. Toll's treatment of kamikaze warfare and the Okinawa campaign is among the book's most affecting sections. He traces the evolution of Japanese tactics from conventional fleet actions to suicide attacks, and shows how these tactics inflicted a new kind of terror on American sailors. The kamikaze was not merely a weapon, it was a cultural and strategic expression of desperation, and Toll treats it with the moral seriousness it deserves. Okinawa becomes a crucible where the brutality of island fighting, cave defenses, civilian suffering, and the relentless grind of attrition foreshadows the terrible choices that would confront American leaders about invading the home islands. Toll's account forces readers to confront the human calculus behind the decision to use atomic weapons, the projected casualties of a mainland invasion, the ferocity of Japanese resistance, and the moral weight of ending the war by unprecedented means. Interwoven with the operational narrative is Toll's exploration of the political and diplomatic context. He shows how Washington's strategic priorities, the relationship between the Navy and the Army, and the alliance with Britain and China shaped campaigns. He examines how President Truman's sudden assumption of the presidency and the decision to use atomic bombs were influenced by months of brutal fighting and the desire to end the war swiftly. Toll does not reduce these decisions to simple cause and effect. He presents them as the culmination of a long, costly campaign that exhausted men and material and tested the moral imagination of leaders.
For American readers, this context is crucial. It reframes the end of the war not as a single moment, but as the product of years of sacrifice and debate.